Have you ever wondered how an entire nation manages to save almost half of everything they earn, while the rest of us can barely scrape together 5%? You won't believe what I'm about to share with you. Today, I'm going to reveal the jaw-dropping secrets behind how 1.4 billion people have turned saving money into an art form. My name is Nick, and I've spent years studying money, personal finance, and the psychology of wealth building. But nothing could prepare me for what I uncovered when I started diving into China's saving strategies. Here's a fact that might just leave you speechless. The average Chinese household saves 36% of every dollar they earn. Yeah, you heard that right, 36%. Meanwhile, in the US, we're celebrating if we can manage to save $35 out of $100. That's a shocking difference, a 10-to-1 ratio that makes us question everything we think we know about money. But wait, it gets even crazier. China's savings rate has averaged nearly 46% since 1952. For over 70 years, through wars, economic crises, and massive social changes, Chinese families have consistently saved nearly half of their income. And during their peak, around 2008, they were saving over 50%. Just imagine saving 50 cents of every dollar you make. Your financial struggles would vanish faster than a pizza at a college party. Now, don't think this is just some miracle or government propaganda. Meet Wang Shenai, a 32-year-old woman who's been saving 90% of her salary for 9 years. Yes, you heard that right, 90%. She lives on just 10% of her income. And the results? She owns 2 apartments in Nanjing, one of China's most expensive cities, all through the power of saving. No lottery tickets, no risky cryptocurrency gambles, just pure financial discipline. When Wang shared her story, it went viral. 500 million views on social media. That's how seriously Chinese culture takes financial discipline. So what's their secret? Is it ancient wisdom passed down for generations? Or is it simply a culture that has cracked the code to wealth? The answer lies in something that will sound completely foreign to most Western ears. The 10:1 rule. It's exactly as extreme as it sounds. Spend only 1 for every 10 you earn. That's a 90% savings rate that would make even the most seasoned financial experts break into a cold sweat. Even the most disciplined Chinese workers struggle to hit that target. But here's the brilliance. By aiming for 90%, even if you only manage to save 50 or 60%, you're still saving far more than most people do. This isn't about being cheap or depriving yourself of all enjoyment. It's about fundamentally shifting your mindset towards money. Imagine growing up believing you should live on just 10% of your income. Every spending decision would change. That daily $5 coffee habit, suddenly, it feels absurd when you realize it represents half of your daily budget. But the 10:1 rule is just the tip of the iceberg. The real game changer is zero-based budgeting, a method so simple that it's almost embarrassing how effective it is. Here's how it works. At the start of every month, you assign every single dollar of your income a job before you spend a single penny. Rent, groceries, transportation, all of it gets assigned. But here's the kicker. Your savings come first. In most cultures, people save whatever's left over after they've paid their bills. But in China, savings are non-negotiable. If you make $4,000 a month, you might allocate $1,000 for savings right off the bat, leaving you with just $3,000 to cover everything else. This forces you to get creative and disciplined because your savings are already spent. The result? A generation of people who have mastered the art of financial discipline. If you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck and want to start saving like they do, this is your wake-up call. Been discussed. It is impossible to overestimate the psychological impact of this strategy. Savings ceases to be a choice when you prioritize it as your top priority. It becomes just as necessary as making your rent or grocery purchases. If you saw a good pair of shoes, you wouldn't skip your rent payment. For the same reason, why would you forego your savings payment? Lifestyle inflation, one of the main causes of wealth loss in Western society, is also eliminated by this zero-based strategy. You understand what I mean. Your expenses inexplicably rise to keep up with your new income after you receive a raise. Even though you have nicer things, you're still living paycheck to paycheck. Chinese households steer clear of this trap by setting aside any increases in income for savings before they become accustomed to using the additional funds. You may be asking yourself if adopting this drastic method of saving necessitates leading a monastic life and never enjoying anything. Another Chinese principle then enters the picture: the difference between wants and necessities. When it comes to separating what you truly need from what marketing has persuaded you that you want, Chinese culture has achieved an almost surgical precision. Consider smartphones as an example. You require a gadget that can connect to the internet, send messages, and make calls. Do you really need the newest model, which costs more than some people's monthly rent and has a titanium frame and a professional camera system? Most likely not. A Chinese strategy would be to invest the difference in a dependable phone that fulfills your real demands. You could be making money with that extra $500 or $1,000 rather than having it sit in Apple's bank account. This does not imply that Chinese households never spend money on enjoyable activities. It indicates that they're extremely careful about how and when they spend their money. It must offer outstanding long-term value if people are going to spend money on something they desire rather than need. That pricey wallet should last for many years. Those high-quality shoes ought to be resilient and long-lasting. Every acquisition is assessed for both its long-term cost per use and its immediate usefulness. The Chinese have also mastered delayed gratification, which is something that Western commercial culture actively opposes. Chinese culture honors the capacity to wait for greater possibilities, despite the many messages we receive about taking care of ourselves and living for the moment. They are able to prevent impulsive purchases that deplete savings accounts and lead to debt accumulation because of their patience. In relation to debt, here is yet another essential distinction that accounts for Chinese people's success in saving. In China, debt is avoided at all costs and is regarded with distrust. For many Chinese families, the thought of using a credit card to pay for a vacation or to finance a car sounds almost crazy. It is assumed that you cannot afford anything at all if you are unable to pay cash for it. Families are compelled by this cash-only mindset to save money for purchases ahead of time rather than taking out loans against their future earnings. Even while it might take longer to purchase that vehicle or go on that trip, you will ultimately own it outright. No interest fees, no monthly payments, and no worry about how you'll make ends meet in the event that your income suddenly declines. Additionally, one of the main barriers to saving that befall households in the West is removed by the anti-debt mindset. You have a lot more money available for savings when you aren't paying your personal loan, credit card, and auto payments each month. Just credit card debt alone accounts for approximately $9,000 in the average American home. If that money weren't being used for monthly interest payments, just think of how much you could save. This is where Chinese savings method becomes really interesting, though, and it would cause most financial advisors to reevaluate their entire understanding of money management. The numbers supporting Chinese families' decision to make education their top investment strategy are simply astounding. Chinese parents are not only putting money aside for college fees when they begin saving for their kids' education. Every yuan invested in education is seen by them as a surefire return on investment that will grow over many generations. This isn't a sentimental approach to the importance of education. This is a straightforward financial formula that views education as the best performing asset in the stock market. Consider it this way. Warren Buffett would be envious of the return you would get if you spent $100,000 on your child's education and it only raised their lifetime earning potential by $50,000 annually. That is equivalent to $1.5 million in extra income on a $100,000 investment over a 30-year career. Show me a mutual fund that can generate returns like that. C. Being generous with their children and not cheap with themselves. They are making well-considered financial choices based on accumulating money over many generations. In fact, the one-child policy exacerbated this effect in ways that economists are still attempting to comprehend. Every educational dollar becomes extremely concentrated when you're only investing in one child. Chinese households might concentrate all of their educational resources on one child rather than distributing them among several. It is comparable to the distinction between investing in a diverse portfolio and placing all of your money in a single, reliable stock. However, if it occurred in America, a different demographic trend that has been influencing Chinese saving behavior for decades would likely cause dating apps to implode. For example, in certain age groups, the gender imbalance brought forth by the one-child policy led to about 22 more men for every 100 women. What is the greatest competitive advantage when there are more males vying for fewer women? Cash. It didn't take long for young Chinese males to understand that having a huge savings account meant more than just having money. It has to do with surviving the dating scene. Economists refer to this as a savings arms race, in which men fought to amass riches more quickly than their contemporaries. What if every man in your town was vying for a date by out-shopping everyone else? The pace of pooled savings would skyrocket. There was more to this competition than simply having cash on hand. Before getting married, Chinese society created the assumption that men should possess real estate rather than rent an apartment or have bad credit. Because property became a requirement for starting a family, this demand made a whole generation of young men hyper-focus savers. Now, before you start pitying Chinese guys for having to save so hard to find a bride, keep in mind that this cultural pressure produced some of the world's most disciplined savers. In their 20s, these men formed sound financial practices that would benefit them throughout their lives. They discovered how to postpone gratification, put long-term objectives ahead of immediate gratification, and consider opportunity cost when making every purchase. Another major factor influencing Chinese saving behavior is the lack of a strong social safety net. Saving money ceases to be an option when you realize that the government will not support you in the event of your unemployment, pay for your medical expenses, or provide for you in retirement. It turns into a survival issue. The majority of Americans believe that in the event of an emergency, they will be covered by Medicare, Social Security, and unemployment insurance. That luxury is not available to Chinese families. They are aware that each dollar they fail to save now could make the difference between old age desperation and dignity. It is difficult to duplicate the sense of urgency this understanding fosters about saving in nations with more robust social services. Extreme saving behavior can be sparked by the healthcare issue alone. Without sufficient savings, a Chinese family could become bankrupt due to medical issues that could cost thousands of dollars in America. Because of this fact, having an emergency fund seems more like self-paid life insurance than a nice-to-have. From a psychological standpoint, however, this is where Chinese saving culture becomes very fascinating. They have succeeded in completely appending the Western way of thinking about wealth and happiness. Chinese culture honors financial discipline as a quality that promotes family security and peace of mind. Despite the fact that Americans are continuously reminded that money cannot buy pleasure and that experiences are more important than savings accounts. The way families discuss money at the dinner table reflects this cultural gap. American children frequently hear their parents grumble about not having enough money, worry about bills, and see financial conversations negatively. Chinese kids grow up listening to their parents talk about money as a tool for accomplishing family goals, celebrate savings milestones, and plan purchases months in advance. As a result, Chinese children grow up with an entirely different emotional connection to money. They perceive saving as empowerment rather than deprivation. They feel confident knowing exactly where every dollar is going rather than feeling constrained by budgets. Because of these psychological underpinnings, the extreme we previously discussed feels normal rather than horrific. First, Chinese culture has also created complex coping mechanisms for decision fatigue, as psychologists refer to it. When you're making significant savings efforts, every purchase becomes a choice that calls for self-control. Take a taxi or go for a stroll, get a pricey or inexpensive shampoo, cook at home, or eat out tonight. Instead than depending on willpower, Chinese households establish mechanisms that remove the majority of these options. Week after week, they purchase the same brands, go to the same stores, and do the same things. This automation lessens the mental strain needed to maintain their savings objectives and stops impulsive expenditures that can jeopardize their advancement. Additionally, rather than working against savings, the idea of face or social repute works in its favor. In American society, showing off your money with pricey vehicles, clothing, and technology frequently elevates your social standing. Being regarded as someone who manages their finances well and saves money is more valuable in Chinese society than flaunting expensive things. Peer pressure actually encourages saving behavior rather than diminishing it because of this social interaction. When your neighbors respect you more for driving a 10-year-old car that's paid off than they would for financing a luxury vehicle, it becomes much easier to make financially sensible choices. Chinese families have also perfected the skill of finding happiness in inexpensive, basic pleasures. Family dinners at home become social occasions. Expensive entertainment can be replaced by strolling through parks. Playing board games or cards might take the place of expensive nights out. Those who are unable to afford better solutions are not acting in a desperate manner. These are deliberate decisions made by families that realize that enjoyment doesn't necessitate continual expenditure. It takes more than just short-term financial savings to achieve fulfillment in inexpensive pursuits. It involves creating a way of living that can be maintained even in the face of unforeseen financial difficulties or economic downturns. You become significantly more immune to financial stress when your happiness isn't dependent on pricey dining establishments, high-end clothing, or lavish holidays. All of these cultural influences together result in saving rates that Chinese families find totally normal, but those Americans find impossible. When saving is seen as noble as opposed to constrictive. When the long-term value of each transaction is assessed. When peer pressure encourages a financial restraint as opposed to indulgence. And when contentment stems from small joys instead of costly indulgences. Reaching a savings rate of 40% or 50% ceases to be an extraordinary accomplishment and becomes a given. The way that the Chinese have weaponized something that would make most Americans break out in hives, however, is arguably the most intriguing feature of their saving culture. Total financial openness among the family. I'm not referring to periodically reviewing the spending plan. I mean that each member of the family should be fully aware of the household's long-term financial objectives, as well as how much money is received and spent. Something extraordinary is produced by this degree of financial transparency. Your adolescent son is less likely to request pricey sneakers if he understands that the family is saving for his college education and can see the specific progress you're making each month. The sacrifice becomes a team effort rather than a sense of deprivation when your spouse realizes that foregoing restaurant meals for 2 months will allow you to fully fund your emergency account. Money talks are frequently treated as state secrets in American families. When children leave the room, parents murmur about costs. Couples dispute about spending behind closed doors. Furthermore, no one can truly tell if the family is headed for financial ruin or is on track. Chinese families absolutely reverse this. Money turns into a family endeavor in which each member is aware of their part and contribution. The mystery of where money goes, which is one of the main causes of financial stress in Western households, is also removed by this transparency. You've probably wondered how you managed to spend $800 last month and had nothing to show for it when you look at your bank account. Chinese families never have that kind of confusion since every transaction is documented, talked about, and assessed in light of the family's objectives. Their tracking method would make accountants happy and cry. We're not referring about sporadic check-ins or imprecise estimates. Chinese families frequently check these figures on a regular basis, much like a board of directors reviewing quarterly reports, and they frequently know exactly how much they spend and when. To Americans, this may sound compulsive, but it's actually quite freeing. When you know exactly where your money goes, you gain control over it. Your budget's enigmatic leak is contained. Those careless spending patterns are revealed and fixed. Careful tracking eliminates ambiguity, which in turn eliminates the financial worry that results from it. But this is where Chinese money management really shines. And if we could swallow our pride long enough to adopt it, It would likely completely transform household finances in the United States. They're experts at creating save. Having money is more like winning a game than going through a punishment. At first, putting these Chinese saving techniques into practice could seem overwhelming. It takes some time to go from saving 3% to 36%. Additionally, you can advance without starting to eat rice and beans at every meal. The great thing about these principles is that even if you follow half of them, you will be well ahead of where you are right now. Budgeting at zero is a good place to start. For a month, keep track of every dollar to determine where your money is really going. It's likely that you'll find that you're spending more on sporadic items than you anticipated. After that, progressively raise your savings rate. Aim for 10% savings the following month if you're currently saving 5%. Aim for 15% once that is comfortable. Keep in mind that this isn't about denying yourself enjoyment. It's about managing your finances deliberately so that you can live the life you truly desire rather than the one that your whims produce. The majority of us are still learning something that the Chinese have figured out. Controlling your finances, not letting them dominate you, is the path to true financial freedom. Therefore, you're moving closer to a financial future that most others can only imagine if you follow the 10-to-1 rule, adopt zero-based budgeting, or just begin to separate your requirements from wants. In a few years, you might be the one saving 40% of your income, and your friends will be wondering how you managed to make it seem so simple.